Dumbest Deaths, Part 122. When workers in a Texas warehouse smelled gas, they did exactly what they were supposed to do. They turned off the power and every single light in the building and then evacuated. After this, 2 technicians from the gas company arrived and they wanted to go in the building and see what was going on. As they wandered around the building, they realised that they couldn't see anything. This is when one of the gas technicians pulled out a lighter. One explosion later and both were unalived.
You guys have to watch this creepy video.
Going for a walk and I look up and I see my neighbors. The hell?
Like, what? The lights flickering and all of them turning to her at the same time is just so creepy. But I think the creepiest part is that this is the one and only video she's posted, and she hasn't posted for 2 weeks. This is her account. The last time she posted was October 14th, I believe. So this begs the question, is this person okay? Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section.
Robert Hansen. Also known as Butcher Baker, Robert Hansen would do a majority of his killings between 1971 and 1983 in the greater Anchorage, Alaska area. Early on though in his life though, Robert would be born in Easterville, Iowa, where he would grow up being a very shy kid that had a lot of acne. He didn't have a lot of friends, but he grew a love for archery and hunting, which would actually be a foreshadow for what he would do in the future. One of Robert's earliest crimes though would be burning down the bus garage at his school. But in 1972, nobody on earth would be prepared for what Robert was about to do. Robert would go out of his way to pick up prostitutes and sex workers and bring them back to his cabin. He then would take advantage of these workers and then set them free into the woods. After giving them a sizable head start, Robert would go out and hunt them down like animals. Robert would go on to do this to 30 total women before he would finally be caught. He then would be charged for assault, kidnapping, and multiple weapons charges. It's a very dark case, but that is the case.
The Cheeto Dust Killer. February 9th, 2006. A witness watches a man in Taylorsville, Utah hold a bottle of Coke and a bag of Cheetos as he talks to 29-year-old Sonia Medja outside of her apartment. Suddenly, the man smacks Sonia hard on the head and forces both of them into the apartment. When Sonia's husband comes home, he finds the man's food outside the door. Inside the apartment, he finds Sonia stripped nude and strangled to death on the bed and her body covered in Cheeto dust. Let's fast forward to February 9th, the same day, but a year later and only a mile away from the previous crime. An unknown man breaks into the apartment of Damiana Castillo and smothers her with a pillow. The investigators compared the 2 crimes and matched the DNA to the same man. Unfortunately, the judge has sealed the case, so the verdict is unknown. But what we do know is that police found the man who we call...
We need to talk about this photo. This is what showed up in Emma's house over and over again, asking her the same question every time. The first time Emma saw this creature, she was in 4th grade. She heard a loud noise in her bedroom, followed by faint scratching sounds. She jumped out of her bed and tried to run into her mom's room, and that's when she saw it. Slowly, it moved towards her, its mouth stretching wide open, asking her one question. How old are you? Emma told this creature her age, and it replied, not yet. But the terrifying thing is, this creature came back over and over again. No matter where she moved, every 4 years this creature would appear in Emma's house. Her mother never believed her, saying it was just a recurring nightmare. But Emma knew something was targeting her, waiting for the right moment. And on the night before her 18th birthday, she was proven right. That night, this creature appeared again, but this time it said something different. It asked Emma, how old are you? And she replied 17. The creature then stood silently before croaking out the words, next time. Emma turns 21 soon, and she's been up every night, paranoid and terrified that any time now she'll find out exactly what the creature meant when it said next time. Like and follow for more.
Surgery in the 1800s was fucking insane. Literally no anesthesia, no fucking drugs. You was awake while motherfuckers was chopping you up. One of the professional choppers, Robert Liston, was literally one of the fastest surgeons, which is good because you obviously want that shit to be over with fast. One day, he was working so fast on a patient that he accidentally cut off 2 of his assistant's fingers. Both the patient and his assistant later died of gangrene. Oh, that's not all. Also, during the procedure, he accidentally swiped his blade past one of the elderly doctor's coats. The elderly doctor thought he was cut and literally went into shock and had a heart attack. So this motherfucker literally killed 3 people trying to save 1.
These are some extremely unsettling facts, and I found all these on Reddit. Number 1, the Russian dead hand. Now I already hear you saying it. What's the Russian dead hand? Well, the Russian dead hand is an extremely realistic end to the Earth as we know it. If Russia's government ever gets overthrown or they detect a nuclear threat, they have a protocol called the Russian dead hand. This protocol will essentially send out nuclear warheads all across the world. And I'm sure I don't need to tell you why that would be bad. Number 2, Yellowstone. Now, chances are, even if you're not from America, you know what Yellowstone is. It's a volcano that we have out here in America that's been dormant for years. And we need to thank our lucky stars that it's dormant, and here's why. If Yellowstone were to go off in the explosive fashion that scientists are expecting it to, it would force us into an ice age. This massive explosion would cover the skies in ash, thus cooling down Earth itself, and sending us into an ice age. And if this were to happen, scientists suspect that about 85% of humanity across the globe would cease to exist. And the reason why this is so scary is the fact that it could happen at any moment. And finally, we have Point Nemo. Now, this one doesn't have anything specifically scary about it, but it's still terrifying to think of. Point Nemo is the farthest point away from land on Earth. Quite literally the middle of the ocean. There's actually a lot of stories about planes and aircrafts that mysteriously crashed right above Point Nemo. Now, whether it's because it's cursed or whatever the case may be, nobody knows. But because this point is so far away from land, we know so little about it. And something about that doesn't sit right with me. Now, if you didn't like hearing those, I'm sorry, but that's
One of the Marines died. Felipe Calderon, the president, gave him this hero's funeral to the Marine who died. Afterwards, some gunmen went to the wake of the Marine in his hometown and murdered the mother, the sister.
Have you ever wondered how accurate police sketches are? I'm going to show you someone who committed a crime and then a sketch, and we're going to see. And this is a series, so follow along for more. So in 1971, John List annihilated his entire family. John had recently lost his job, but for a while he was pretending that he still had a job. He would leave his house in the mornings, but would spend the whole day just reading and not being at work. He knew his family would eventually catch on, so on November 9th, very slowly and methodically, one by one, he took the lives of his mother, his wife, and all 3 of his children. And then he disappeared to start a new life. That is, until 18 years later, when Frank Bender, a police sketch artist, debuted this clay bust of what he thought John would look like at this time on America's Most Wanted. He age progressed John 18 years from the last time he had been seen, and he even got his glasses right. The bust was so accurate that a man named Robert Clark would be arrested in Denver because his neighbors called in a tip to the FBI. John had been living under that name for 18 years.
It was all-out war in an Uber over a mask. 3 women are hassling the driver because he says one of them refused to wear a mask. Watch as she does the unthinkable, coughing on the driver. Then the irate woman grabs his phone and rips off his mask.
You don't touch my property!
The driver says he even drove them to a gas station so she could buy a mask when they first got into his vehicle.
I never said anything bad to them. I never cursed.
So, who is the woman in question? We've learned she has dozens of modeling pictures on Instagram. Today, she is apparently admitting her outrageous behavior.
All I did was take his mask off and cough a little bit, but I ain't even have corona. He lucky as hell I ain't have nothing on me.
She claims the driver was trying to force them out of the car. Police are investigating the incident.
Since so many people are going crazy over the new Jeffrey Dahmer series on Netflix, let me tell you the actual story. Jeffrey Dahmer was born in 1960. He had a pretty normal childhood until he started to become withdrawn. During high school, he started drinking, and over time, it started to become a real problem. His first murder was when he was 18 in high school. He picked up a hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks, and when Stephen decided that he wanted to leave, Dahmer murdered him. He dissected him and scattered his remains all over the backyard. And he didn't kill anyone until 9 years later. All his murders, he took Polaroids of. He was into necrophilia, cannibalism, and so much more. When he was caught, he was charged with 15 murder cases, and he was charged with 957 total years in prison. When he was caught, they found 7 skulls all over his apartment. and he confessed to not only killing but eating his victims. In prison, he was attacked multiple times by other inmates, but the thing that ended his life was when he was attacked by an inmate and murdered for what he did. He didn't die on impact, but he died on the way to the hospital. The Netflix show tells you all of this with more detailed information.
On March 5th, 2013, Shirai Mawera and her boyfriend Lovemore Muzarabani left the main road they had been walking down, and they headed out into the bush near Lake Kariba in Zimbabwe. They were headed to a specific spot. It was this beautiful clearing that the two actually went to frequently, and it was a spot where it was very private, and that was good because they like to use this spot to express their love for each other in a physical way. So when they got there, the two of them removed their clothing, and they became intimate with each other. Now, at some point, they were laying on the ground in a spooning position when Lovemore, the boyfriend, hears from right behind him this loud roar coming from the bushes. And he immediately ceases what he's doing and he jumps up. Right as Shirai is beginning to kind of sit up, this huge male lion comes bursting out of the brush and just tackles Shirai, pinning her to the ground. Lovemore, the boyfriend, he just takes off running. He runs till he gets kind of to the edge of the clearing, and then he realizes, okay, I just abandoned my girlfriend to this animal. And he turns around and he looks, but he can no longer hear Shirai screaming. In fact, the only noise he can hear is the noise of this giant lion tearing into his girlfriend while it's still got it pinned underneath her. So not knowing what else to do, he just runs through the woods as fast as he can, completely naked, till he gets back to the main road they walked in on, where he tries to flag down some traffic, some passersby. But nobody is stopping to help him because they think he's mentally ill. Here you have this guy kind of out a little bit far away from town. He's wearing absolutely no clothes. He's completely nude, and he's just frantically trying to wave down cars. Eventually, some folks do stop. They hear what he has to say. They take him to the nearest police station where he tells them what happened. They get park rangers, and then police and park rangers go out to this clearing where he tells them that it's at. When they get there, the lion is still there. It's eating Shirai. She's clearly deceased. Her throat has been ripped out and her stomach has been ripped open. They take a shot at the lion. They miss the lion, and then they launch a hunt for this lion. Now, shortly after launching this hunt on that same day, they came across more human remains not belonging to Shirai. They came across a hand, part of a hip, and a full human skull. And it was obvious whoever these remains belonged to had just been killed very recently. It turns out that the night before, a 77-year-old man named Musinji had been walking home late at night when apparently this lion, or one of these lions, had grabbed him off the path, drug him out into the woods, and then he was almost completely consumed. A few days later, park rangers would locate 3 different lions that they think were responsible. They shot all 3 of them. I believe it was 2 males and a female. One of the lions had marks around its neck from a human snare, and it didn't look healthy, so that's why they think this started. It is unknown how many people those lions actually killed and ate.
Let's talk about the outrageous Korean-New Zealand children's suitcase tragedy. A case where a New Zealand family purchased abandoned suitcases in an online auction. After they purchased them, they were horrified to find out what they found inside. 2 children's bodies, probably between ages 6 through 10. Now, the terrible part about this case is that the main suspect is the children's mother. So this terrible act was concluded to have happened around 2018. So the primary suspect, the mother that you see behind me, was a woman who had settled down in New Zealand. She was originally from Korea. She married another Korean New Zealand man. However, her husband passed away sometime around 2017 or 2016. Mysteriously and coincidentally, the mother left New Zealand in 2018. Remember, the crime was concluded to have happened around 2018 as well. So, after this family purchased the abandoned suitcases, they reported it to the authorities. Then, the New Zealand authorities cooperated with South Korean authorities to track the mother down. Members of the South Korean public helped a lot in tracking the mother down. People called into the police, letting the police know that they feel like they saw someone who fit the mother's description. Combined with that, the police checked her family background and also made use of security camera footage to ultimately locate her in Ulsan, South Korea. Remember guys, in South Korea these days, there are cameras everywhere in the public. Now it's concluded that the mother after leaving her children in a suitcase in New Zealand, went to Seoul, South Korea, but also went to Ulsan, South Korea after. I think she tried taking some jobs here and there. Some believe that she was obviously hiding. Now, when questioned by reporters, the mother simply said, "I didn't do it." Now, here's what's terrible about this case. If you assume that the New Zealand family found the children in the bag since they were put in there, that could have been for a span of about 4 years. So the bodies would have been there for several years. That is tragedy-inducing for the people who discovered it. So what happens next? Well, South Korea and New Zealand have an extradition treaty, meaning that under certain conditions, they can extradite this woman from South Korea to New Zealand and probably investigate and try her there. So right now in Korea, they're going to investigate the case and eventually have some sort of process or hearing for whether or not they should extradite the mother back to New Zealand. Anyways, I think a lot of you have probably heard about this case by now, but I think it's another example in which the public knowing about these things can help solve.
This is a true horrifying story, part 25. Warning, this is not a joke. The information that's going to be shared is dangerous and life-threatening. Do not, under any circumstance, commit the actions that will be narrated. This is the world's most dangerous book ever, Shams al-Ma'arif. This book was written by Ahmad al-Buni in the 17th century. But technically, the author of this book is not a human being. I never did and will never read this book. And this is your second warning. Do not read this book. Ahmad al-Buni practiced black magic, and he was in contact with the most powerful jinns and demons before he passed away. The jinns were the authors of this book. The elder generations, like our moms and dads, have heard about this book and they were warned by it. There are thousands of horrifying stories of people who read this book. Shams al-Ma'arif explains everything about black magic, how to get in touch with the world of jinns, how to marry a jinn, and the sacrifices you have to do for the devil, and much more. Unfortunately, this book can be easily found online. One day, a Saudi Arabian man that read hundreds of books for a living decided to read this book specifically out of interest and love for all books, without fearing the consequences behind it. He reached the chapter that teaches readers how to get married to a female jinn. He laughed about it. He tried the ritual to experiment it. The first night after finishing the whole book and completing the marriage ritual, he felt someone breathing next to his face. And on the second night, he felt a hand touching his feet. And on the third night, he heard her voice. The man was officially locked in a marriage with a demon. 5 years go by. He met a normal, beautiful woman that he fell in love with, and they both decided to get married. A week before the wedding day, the bride, the bride's parents, and the groom's parents all pass and die in 3 different car crashes. These are the consequences behind this book. And it's also known from many stories of people that have died from reading the first few pages. If you don't finish reading the book, you will get killed. All my stories, all of them, are true incidents that happened one time only. But this book is a product that is permanently available online. I beg you, do not go anywhere near Shams al-Ma'arif. This video is to educate you on the dangers behind this book. Do not go anywhere close to the world of jinns.
Women in the streets of London are disappearing, and it seems like nobody's doing anything about it. This is the stalking and capture of Zara Alina. And her whole video is on my profile link, so go to my profile, click on the link. It's
At 9 a.m. on July 14th, 2012, friends Benjamin Linden and Ryan Solis were surfing near Wedge Island in a bay locally known as Dolphins off the coast of Western Australia. They were right next to another young man named Matt Holmes, who was on a jet ski towing another surfer out to catch waves. And the two, Ryan and Benjamin, were sitting about 100 meters offshore. They were just sitting there waiting to catch the next big wave when Ryan looks off into the water, and beneath him he sees this huge dark shape swimming along the ocean floor. And he immediately recognizes what it is, and he yells over at Benjamin, "We have to go in now." So they start paddling towards shore when all of a sudden this massive 5-meter long great white shark comes rocketing to the surface. It almost breaches right next to Ryan, right on his right side, so close that the spray from its gills sprays all over Ryan. And then the shark goes out in front of his board, off in front of him to the left. It wheels around and it charges at Ryan. And when it gets about a meter away from Ryan, thankfully the shark breaks off its attack. It veers away, but unfortunately it heads straight for Ben, who's about 15 to 30 meters away at this point. Now Ryan, he's actually able to catch like 2 waves that bring him most of the way into shore, but Ben isn't so lucky. And as this shark approaches, Benjamin, he gets his legs up on his board to get him out of the water, and it looks like he's getting ready to kick this shark if he needs to defend himself. But unlike the shark did with Ryan, this shark does not veer away. It comes lunging out of the water, it grabs Benjamin by the legs, and it just drags him off of his board. Now, Matt Holmes, the guy on the jet ski, he's watching this whole thing take place. So he tows his mate into shore as fast as he can. He turns around, he speeds back out there to try and help. And when he gets to Benjamin's body, Benjamin is lying face down in the water. One of his legs has been completely removed, torn off at the hip. The other one has been removed about halfway down, and he's just lying there face down. Now, the shark is circling Benjamin's body, but Matt, he wants to retrieve Benjamin, even though he knows he can't really save him. He wants to retrieve him, so he goes to reach for him, but this shark comes barreling up in between the jet ski and Benjamin's body, and it rams the jet ski. Matt said it was almost like the shark was trying to ram him off of the jet ski. So Matt, he circles back around, makes another attempt, but before he gets back, the shark comes up, it grabs Ben's body, and it dives down with it. Matt would go back to shore, he would grab Ryan, the two of them would go out, and they would search for Benjamin's body. They would call 000, authorities would come out, a 3-day search was launched, nothing was ever found except for the surfboard with a big bite taken out of it. Benjamin was only 24 at the time he was killed by this shark.